Yay! We're back! Awesome. Sorry for the cutoff earlier. My internet literally went out and I had to reset it, and then I ended up getting dinner. But I'm glad we were all back, and should be fun. I'm gonna start with a little improvisation to give some time for people to join, and we'll probably start talking at around 6. So one way that I like to think about harmony, which is really, really fun, is when you're moving from one pitch collection to another pitch collection, you can kind of develop a library of ideas, and there are different kinds of things that you can use, processes, to guide you harmonically. And if you use different processes, then you'll get a different sonic result. So it's not just about learning all the chord progressions there are. It's about following different processes, and the process gives organization, but also freedom inside which you can sort of make art, but keeping a consistent aesthetic. So one thing that you can do, for example, is think about a particular kind of combination sonority that you like, and then use that as a way to pivot from one pitch collection to another pitch collection. So for example, just to choose a simple one, because everyone likes Lydian, right? So let's say we put a G major chord on top of an F major chord. Just planing it around, right? That's like the 2 chord on top of the 1 chord in Lydian. So if I think, okay, well, I can make a melody, any one of the pitches inside of that chord, and as long as I have that chord, I can maintain the aesthetic, but there are a lot of different ways to pivot depending upon which note that you use, right? Do you use the root, third, or fourth of the second chord or the first chord? So to keep things simple, let's label them that way. So we'll call the F major chord chord 1, and the G major chord chord 2, and then each one of them has a root, third, and fifth. And so what you can do, which is really fun, is just write out a simple little pattern that you can then follow in order to organize yourself in this way. Let me see if I can find a little pin here. So let's say that we kind of did an alternating little pattern here, right? Where we sort of did, we'll do the number 1 or the number 2 for the F or the G chord, and then we'll put root, third, and fifth, R, T, and F. All right, so we'll just do R, T, F, and then we'll do 1, 2. So 1, 2, 1, 2. So we'll just write a bunch of 1, 2s. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and then we'll cycle through R, T, and F after that. R, T, F, R, T, F. So it ends up being 1 R, 2 T, 1 F, 2 R, 1 T, 2 F. Do you see the pattern, right? And then you can use that as its own sort of cycle, and that gives you maximum variety, but still maintaining the same kind of aesthetic. So let's see if we can use it so we can understand how to concretize the concept. So let's say that we're in the key of C major, right? I'll let someone pick a note of of C major. I'll pick the first one. Let's go with G, all right? So we're going to start with the first one. So G is going to be the root, all right, because that's one of the first start with, the root of the one chord, all right? So we're considering the F major chord to be the one chord, not one chord in the Roman numeral sense, but so that means we have the note F, okay? And then if we have the note, if we use the note G as the root, that means then G major is going to be superimposed with A major. And so now I can put both of those chords together. So now I make this note G major and then A major on bottom, right? You can place them in either direction. And so when you're moving from one location to another pitch collection, you can do that. So if I'm in C major, right, this G major chord belongs, but then I could do the A major chord, right, even though that takes me out with the C sharp. But you're using a particular note as a pivot chord. So I could do, right, or same chord. And in that case, I'm always making it the third of the second chord. But you can cycle through different chord members, and any kind of pattern that you make helps keep it fresh, but as long as you're sticking with that particular sonority, and that's just one of an infinite number of different kinds of sonorities that you can use, right? So you can think of pivots from different pitch collections, and it's fun too, because even if like we go, one thing that I enjoy toying around with is just like moving around in half steps, which is actually 5 ticks in the circle of fifths. It's funny that when you move up and down, just chromatically, on the circle of fifths, you're actually going pretty far, right? So for example, D minor to C sharp minor, 5 ticks away. But anyway, there are still common tones that you can use, and it's fun to practice this in the context of like a progression. So let's say that I have a jazz progression where I'm like in the key of E flat major, right? And I'm gonna do like B flat dominant 7, with some extensions, and then instead of going to E flat, I'm gonna go to G minor 3. Many of you are familiar with this. Right? And then mostly what we'd expect is G minor, C dominant 7, F minor, B flat dominant 7, E flat, a chain, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1. You've heard this before many times in jazz. But instead of doing that, you could actually just slip down chromatically. You could go G minor, F sharp minor, B minor, and then either E dominant 7, which is like a tritone substitution in E flat major, or just B flat, right? But that gives you a good opportunity to toy around with these pivot notes moving around half steps. So let's just take that little bit. That'll be our chord. So we'll focus on the G minor, F sharp minor, and F minor part, right? So one thing that's really fun is that, well, what are some of the extensions that we like in jazz? We like the 9th on a minor chord, right? We really like that. The 11th is also nice, right? Right. The 13th, the Dorian 13th, okay? So let's see which of these are in common between G minor and F sharp. And it turns out the A and the E, which is the 9th, Dorian 13th and 9th on G minor, becomes then the guide tones, aka the root and the 3rd and 7th of F sharp minor. And then we can slip down and do the same thing, right? So that's a fun thing we do, You can use different scales. Right, so using it in the context of like a line or something like this. You can also just experiment going up and down with one. Like you can just take this chord and arpeggiate. Right? So that's essentially just like, and then I landed on the E, right? Which is nice half step motion going all the way up and then down. Sorry, wrong note. You can make it work, but any shape that you can find inside of a chord can become its own thing. So like if I'm in, for example, just D minor and D Dorian, white keys make it easy, I can play anything that's possible to play in C major on top of that. Right? And that's something that's really easy to do in C major. But if you're in like, you know, F Dorian, that's where being comfortable in the key can be really, really, really helpful, you know. But anyway, so let's figure out some other interesting things that we can do. So we know also that we can make this G minor a G minor major 7, and that gives us an F sharp. And it's fun because that goes from major 7 to minor 7. But then on F sharp minor, now it's like roots and then melodic minor raised 7. And so you could be like, right, you know, using it in the context of something like that. But I also often find myself just kind of making friends for a while, just a little bit, with specific extensions that are nearby to each other. So like, for example, the 9th and the 11th, which we're talking about on, yeah, you're right, my back will be hurting if I was crouching. It's a good thing I have an inversion table. I literally own an inversion table in my closet, and I've got like a psychedelic sun blanket with glow-in-the-dark stars on a black light and a Gone and Kill You a poster that glow, which is super fun. I'll have to show that to you guys one day. But anyway, I forgot my train of thought. What was I talking about? Shapes. Oh yeah, we were doing the G minor, F sharp minor, F minor thing, right? So we can be, I can focus on, for example, the 9th and the 11th. Almost sounds like the kind of, like, for example, that's like an F major chord on top of G minor. And you can also just do that. You can just be like, I'm going to pretend that I'm an F Ionian while I'm on G Dorian. And you think, your logical mind thinks they're identical. But your intuitive mind knows that if you're conceptualizing it as F, then it's going to sound different than if you conceptualize it as another, even though it's the same pitch collection, right? For example, if I'm thinking of this as G minor, I'll focus more on the triad of G minor. I have things that I do in G minor. But if I'm thinking F major, I play different things, and I focus on more the hip notes, so to speak, which is fun. And you can do that for each one moving down and pick a different one. So we could do F major for the G minor, right? And then for the F sharp minor, maybe we could do, instead of E major, which would be the same thing, we could do A Lydian, right? So let's just try that. So F major and then A Lydian on the chords G minor and F sharp minor. Right? Sounds good, doesn't it? And it's just because we're thinking about it that way. And then maybe I think of B flat Lydian dominant 7 on top of F melodic minor. So, but anyway, it's fun too, because it's fun to navigate. Oftentimes people will wonder how pianists will just kind of navigate up and down the keyboard. A lot of times you can just play, a scale doesn't really sound good. If I just, most of the time if I'm just playing a scale, it's not that it doesn't sound good, it just sounds kind of boring, right? But if you skip the flat 9 interval, it's just basically either, if you think of each pitch collection as being like a 7-note subset on the circle of fifths, if you take either the tail ends on the clockwise right or the counterclockwise far left and just take that note out. So for example, in like C major, those two notes are B and F, right? And it's fun to remove either of those notes because then you take away the tritone. If you take away the B, then you get this really cool... homey sound, really good for improvising, that kind of stuff. But at the same time, if instead of doing that, if you take away the F, then you get this really nice scale, which is just like a major scale, but without the 11th, without the 4th scale degree. So if we do that on E flat, just take away the A flat from the E flat, right? And the way that I like to finger that is essentially just, right? So it's essentially just 3 3-2-1, 3-2-1, E flat, D, C, B flat, G, F. And it's actually easier to play that than a standard scale because it's 3 and 3. It's a symmetrical grouping. And so it's easier to fit in a musical context and easier to play with your finger compared to like the normal, right? So if we just do the, in the context of jazz, I think it generally sounds a little bit, nicer. So, but that's a nice sound, isn't it, though? That's that A open fifth on top of G minor. Right? And what do you mean by alienating? Are you saying you want the audience to still be able to enjoy it without understanding the harmony? I can't remember what the exact sentence in which I said that word, but that sounds probably like something. I should answer some questions now. So I'll do that. Ideas on how to use advanced harmony concepts, atonalism, clusters, polychords in the context of popular music without making it unpalatable and alienating to the audience. You were asking about his concept of alienating. Well, yeah, I mean, part of that depends upon taste, right? But if you want to make something more palatable, you have to ask, what does that mean? Does it just mean less complicated? Does it mean less unfamiliar in terms of style? Does it mean that you use less polyrhythms because people like to be able to tap their foot to something, which is harder to do with rhythms that are more asymmetrical? Does it mean just less dissonance, right? So when you're talking about accessibility, you first have to think about your demographic in order to even know what the word means, right? But once you think of your demographic, right, then there are a lot of different ways to be creative inside a given stylistic context, right? So for example, if I want to do something like polyrhythmic, you could lead up to it as opposed to just sort of like existing inside of it. You don't have to write a whole polyrhythmic pop song, for example, but polytonal pop song. But really, I mean, all of these labels are just ways of organizing commonalities between patterns, right? But as long as you limit yourself to a certain kind of palette, like for example, the question is, why do you want something polytonal inside of a pop song? If it's because the particular kind of polytonal sound that you can get from a certain pitch collection is just like would really fit the vibe, then totally do it and it'll be right. And it's not like you can write a paper about what you know about using polytonality. It's just like in that specific context, then something polytonal ended up working nicely. Like for example, one aspect of polytonality that's not even really polytonal, but it's just like combining two chords from disparate pitch collections that sounds really nice is like C major on top of D flat. And if you turn that into a scale, which I often like to do, it's almost like double harmonic minor, but without the leading tone. And if you take away the E, then it's almost like a Japanese scale, which is a very beautiful scale, by the way. Very solemn and, very, very, very cool. And it depends upon what you mean by polytonal, right? Because if you combine together two chords from disparate pitch collections, if you then make a single scale that houses both of them, then it's not really polytonal because it's just one scale, right? When you have two different scales going on simultaneously, let's say like E major on top of C major, right? So you can see how I started out and it was like a little bit creepy, but then I kind of shifted it into A melodic minor, which is a more familiar scale that is slightly similar. So you can also like, if the whole tone scale, for example, sounds too weird for a particular context, you could start with something that does sound like it's in context and then slip it into the whole tone scale. So for example, in pop music, you often hear this, or even, that kind of lament based progression I was talking about earlier. Well, it turns out if you use that A minor going to G sharp augmented, you can use the whole tone scale on tap that, right? So, something that may be in a pop song, right? I just used the whole tone scale, but it sounded fine, at least to my ears, because it was used in a functional context, right? So it also depends upon, like, are you writing a piece in the whole tone, scale, or exploring certain or is it used as a device in the context of a different genre? I mean, there are lots of different ways that you can conceptualize it. Let me see if I can read some of these comments. Are you still doing score review? I sent an email, but I think you might have missed it with some stuff. Definitely send it me again. If anyone sent me an email that I didn't get, just send it to me again. So I should be able to get it. Because I just recently got caught up with all my emails. I get so many. So if you send me anything now to any one of the emails listed in any one of my YouTube videos, then we should be good. So I'll take a few more questions if anyone has them. And then I'm probably going to work on a YouTube video that I'm uploading soon, which I'm really excited about. I'm also making a new pamphlet, by the way, on writing orchestral flurries, like Daphnis and Chloe, the kind of magical combinations of what scales to use, what rhythms to use, what instruments work well, with a bunch of examples. That will be released, if not tomorrow, then the day after. So stay tuned for that. I'll probably just make it like $3 or something cheap. But anyway, so I'll see if anyone has any questions. What's the best way, in your opinion, to go from minor to the major immediately to the right in the circle, like D minor to C minor? Well, D minor to C minor isn't immediately right on the circle. That's 2 ticks, right? That would be 2 ticks dark. But assuming that's what you mean, I mean, going from any pitch collection to any other pitch collection, the 2 things that help you out are common tones and chromatic voice leading, right? And no matter what pitch collection you're going to from any other pitch collection, you can always access a nearby pitch either by a common tone or by a half step, right? So if I'm going from like C major to A flat major, even though the C major to A major, even though the C doesn't belong to A major, it can just slip up chromatically, right? And that sounds fine, right? I can also put the tones that are kind of moving directly chromatically, that maybe they have a little bit of a spacey sound that maybe we might not want for a certain context aesthetically. Maybe we might want it in another context, especially for like a cartoony film score or something like that. But if you don't want it, then you can also just put it in an inner voice and put common tones on top, right? Because that makes a huge difference, right? So for example, if I go from C major to C sharp minor, right? If I put the C to C sharp on top, it's very much like dramatic, Lord of the Rings kind of, or like G going to G sharp, right? But if I keep the E on top, and I think that's what Howard Shore actually did in Lord of the Rings, right? So you can kind of use smoke and mirrors and hide those things in the background, or you can show them and make it wacko on purpose. It's up to you. It's just, I think, important to be intentional about it and aware of what you are doing. Hope that helps at least a little bit. Sorry I'm so hyper right now. It's because I've been drinking tall Americano from Starbucks. Where do you start with Thomas Goss's content? I mean, anything. I really love his orchestration tips. If you haven't read a good orchestration manual, I mean, even if you have, there's a lot of really useful information in there, and it's very colorfully. So his 100 orchestration tips and 100 more orchestration tips book is great. I would recommend that. I would also recommend you just check out his orchestration tips in general, all of his videos. Any of his stuff, it doesn't really matter. Just watch it and watch it all, and then find another good channel and watch all of that stuff, and just make stuff and just keep going and have fun. That's pretty much all that boils down to. So, I was thinking about playing little giant steps, but I might not do that. Giant steps is hard. Maybe we could experiment a little bit with giant steps. So I haven't practiced giant steps a lot. So I don't sound good on it currently, but that's a great thing for me to show you, because it would just give you an idea of possible way of going about kind of figuring it out, right? So for those of you who are interested in this, I guess you can just get giant steps pulled up. You can find the lead sheet online pretty much anywhere very easily just by Googling it. Let's see, do I have a clipboard? Probably do somewhere over the rainbow. I could probably probably just hold it up there. Yeah, that should be good. Anyway, so yeah, the chords are very, very difficult. And in the first measure, the first two systems in particular are difficult because they don't really have any functional relationships. And so if you're used to playing stuff that you would normally play in beat bop, 2-5-1 kind of stuff, B major 7 to D is really weird. And there's not a lot in common, right? Like what is B? We think of B major as being like Ionian. Then we have a B and we have an E. Those are like the only notes that are in common between B major 7 and D dominant 7, right? Because D dominant 7 is the dominant of G, right? And G and B major are very far away from each other. But we can also think about particular extensions. So, for example, using this, is this G sharp right here on B major, which is just like an add 6 on B major, right? I can keep that on the D dominant 7, and then it becomes like a sharp 11, and then I slip from G sharp up to the A, which is a 9th on G major, right? Right, so even though that's an example of something that you could do over that particular chord progression, but anyway, but yeah, now we're in G major, and then no 2, not even a 2, just suddenly we go to E flat major, right? All these different key centers are located kind of in major thirds in the circle of fifths. You can like draw out triangles, augmented chords, and the whole shebang. Lots of fun. And then it's pretty easy at that point. If we're going from E flat major 7 to A minor. Again, I like to have these common tones. So, like, for example, instead of thinking, like, making things super weird, I could do E flat and B flat, which is the root and fifth of E flat major. We normally wouldn't play something so quote-unquote boring. But you can, because then what you can do is slip it up into a B natural and an E natural, which works on A minor and also D dominant 7, right? Which sounds kind of nice, actually. You could also just keep this A and this G and this D, as you remember from before. Sus chords are very, very flexible because they're 3-note adjacent pitch collections. So this works, right? So that's just using that, which happens to work with both of the pitch collections. That's like 3 common tones that we've turned into a shape that we're using. Familiar with these different keys, you start to see the patterns and you start to see bridges to get you from one place to another, and it's all just visual and intuitive, and you don't even have to think about it, right? When someone looks at someone else who's doing something crazy, they think, oh, how could he do that? I couldn't think about it. It's like, yeah, he's probably not thinking about it either. He's, thought about it for many years and turned it in, just like when you first learn how to drive. It's like, where's this located? I can't use my left foot, hold the clutch and gear. It's so complicated. I can't. And then you're just doing it without even thinking about it, right? The human brain is amazing in this way. And everyone has a human brain, which is fantastic. But in any case, and then a similar kind of thing happens, but in a different location. So if we go from, let me see if I can fold this so that it doesn't keep falling down. I know I've got a clipboard somewhere. Oh well, yeah, that should work. Then we get G major, B flat dominant 7, E flat major, F dominant 7, B major, which is the same thing, relatively speaking. It is the same exact thing as the first line. It's just starting on G instead of B. That's what makes it difficult. It's just the keys that make this difficult, right? But it's fun because it forces you to think more nimbly, and you're bridging between different keys as opposed to just licks and scales and things that you're always used to playing, right? And then it gets a little bit easier here, right? So, like for example, B major 7 going to F. I've been toying around with keeping this note as a common tone. So the 7th of B major 7, which is A sharp, right? And then F minor and then B flat, both of them work. See 11th. So right, you can use it as a resolution like it. So, and anytime you have confusion with any one of these chords going to one of the other ones, you can just loop it. So if I can't figure out how to do B major 7 to go into D dominant 7, start feeling comfortable, then add the G, and then add the B flat, and then so on and so forth, and gradually add the whole piece, and you just become more familiar with, because that's the first thing, before you can play something beautiful, too many people try to play something beautiful before they can just even stay inside of the perimeters of what even is what they're playing in the first place. Like, first, just at least be comfortable enough to play in the diatonic key centers of all these different chords, and then you can start adding suspensions. And first, don't also try to play. Everyone hears John Coltrane. I shouldn't be giving advice like this because I haven't even practiced this, but everyone, I feel like, hears John Coltrane, you know. It's just 8 notes, streams of 8 notes, and that's fine. That's super fun. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But again, like, you could turn this into a slow samba or something, and then it's not scary at all. So on and so forth. You know, that didn't sound very good in particular, but anyway, just to give you kind of an example. So, but once we go and kind of rest on E flat major, at least we don't get 2 chords in a bar. That gives us a second, right? And then going, one thing that I like to do is, so let's say we take this E flat, G, B flat, D, which is E flat major 7. We can very easily slip the B flat and E flat up to B natural and E natural to get an E minor 7 chord, and that happens to work very nicely as an upper structure of A minor, right? And then if I wanted to, I can make an E dominant 7, which works great on top of D. And then maybe you could just resolve the G sharp up to A and then G major, something like that, right? Very smooth voice leading. So see if you can follow that. Right? So something that's fun to play around with. It in like a context like that, right? And it's fun to play these things, you know, little turns and things like that, but don't get super caught up in them. It's always tempting to just learn a bunch of those so you sound authentically like jazz, but they can pollute your playing if you learn them before you learn the fundamentals, right? Because then your fingers just automatically go to those things, and then it's kind of scary to take that away and play something more fresh and original, because then you realize, oh, actually, I don't know what I'm doing. But that shouldn't be scary. You should be comfortable with not knowing what you're doing, and then figure out what you're doing, and then go to the next place and do the same thing, and so on and so forth. But the hexatonic scale is also really fun. That's like Star Wars. It's kind of exotic, you know, in a kind of sound. All right, I'm probably going to head out soon. I'll be back for another live stream soon. But any last questions from anyone? Somewhere over the giant steps. Will you do any non-music videos on your channel? I'd love to do all kinds of non-music stuff, and I do non-music stuff on the side. I don't know how good it is, but it doesn't matter. In any case, I'm probably going to make more YouTube channels soon devoted to some of those other things, and I'll start sharing those links in my YouTube videos, so be on the lookout for that. And I'm probably going to do an email list soon, where if anyone's interested for my stuff, I'll just send out an email newsletter once a week with just most recent stuff that I've made, just for those of you who are interested. So if you want to be on that email newsletter, you can send me an email now, or you can just wait until I come up with some form that I send to everyone. But I guess I'll just play a little bit of something. You know what? Maybe I'll play Misty, because I already played it and did a rendition on my channel, and so I might as well play it again and do something different. Oh yeah, and definitely Dylan. Let's do it. Maybe we'll play it slow this time. I feel like just messed around, so that's what I do. That's that thing I was talking about earlier. Yoshimatsu, by the way, if any of you haven't heard of Yoshimatsu, Takashi Yoshimatsu, he's a beautiful composer. Most of his harmonic progressions often just literally involve 4-1. That's it, right? Just F major. Music does that, but it's just so beautiful. It's so simple. It's just 4 going to 1, not even 5. It's just resting. We can do E minor as a substitution for a C, and we can also use D minor as a substitution for F. And it's funny too, sometimes 2 can go right to 1. That's actually a very relaxed thing. A lot of Jamaican music does that, like reggae and stuff, you know? It's very relaxed. Instead of going 2-5, which is what the classicists would do, it's going straight from 2 to 1. And even the Mario Star theme does that. Just those 2 chords. I mean, honestly, just messing around with these kinds of things. I always play. By the way, I have terrible technique. Don't copy my technique. I need to learn to be more relaxed. I tend to pluck things. I listen to too much Glenn Gould. I don't know if you ever heard of Glenn Gould. He did a famous recording in the 50s or 60s of the Goldberg variations. They're so fast. He plays them. I actually learned. I can't remember. I don't remember what comes after that, but. But anyway, you should check out that album because it's amazing. He was a very eccentric. There's also a great interview with him where he talks about Bach and the art of fugue, and he's such a great orator. Anyway, side note, sorry for the very I mean, these streams, I'm going to keep them spontaneous and crazy because I can be more organized in my other videos. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it despite my crazy rambling around. And I will see you in the next live stream. And I'm going to try and be consistent about it and pick a specific time every week that I'll do a live stream. But at the same time, it might be nice for me to just keep it spontaneous because then it might give more opportunities for different people to join depending upon their time zone. So who knows? But in any case, I will see you guys and gals later. Have a fantastic week and rest your